Hi, Tamside. So, when I'm feeling a bit sad or a bit bored or a bit like I'm missing my friends and my family, I do like to read because it takes my mind off everything. And I came across this story that a teacher has actually written very recently for his own class. And I read it last night and I want to share it with you. It's called How Not to Go to School by a teacher called Mike Forde. And I'll send it round to your parents with the newsletter this week. And he's written this story for his class to help them feel a bit better about what's going on in the world at the moment. And it's written from the perspective of a little girl who's typically homeschooled. So she normally learns at home. So she feels that she's the expert in how not to go to school. So, chapter 1, How Not to Go to School. Sunday, 29th of March, 2020. I'm very good at not going to school. I've done it every single day of my life. First, I wake up, get dressed and feed my animals. Alfred the Great, our very fat cat. Parsley, my imaginary guinea pig. Molly Wobble and Maximilian Ironbelly too, my two real guinea pigs. Einstein and Meatball, the dogs. Stickosaurus, the stick insect. Diane, Pam and Anne, the nanny goats. Next, I feed me. I brush my teeth and then I don't go to school. For some of you, it might be a little more tricky. You've been going to school for so long that it's seeped into your bones. You have times tabled tattooed into your brain and your belly rumbles whenever the lunch bell rings. You'll have to remember to not put on your school uniform and not pick up your packed lunch. You need to not go through the front door, not walk down the street, not cross the road with the lollipop lady, and absolutely, definitely not say good morning to your teacher. And that's all before school's even started. Then you have to spend all day concentrating on not listening to what your teacher is saying. I'm Parsley Nimblewood. By the way, I've never been to school, not once. I've never put my hand up to ask a question. I've never run on a race on a sports day, never eaten a school dinner. Instead, I learn things at home with my mum and my little brother, Bo. Things like how to milk a grumpy nanny goat and how to extract the healing properties of crystals. We live in a little ramshackle cottage at the end of a windy, narrow lane in the middle of the moors, just beyond Wensleydale. It's so far from anywhere that whenever a car drives past, we all come running out to say hello. It's so far that it would take hours to get to school and back. And anyway, my mum says they don't teach you the important stuff at school, like understanding the truth about crystals. She really likes crystals. Anyway, now nobody is going to school. So today on Sunday, 29th of March 2020, I've decided to write a book for all of you. A book to explain exactly how not to go to school. Chapter 2. How to care for your grown-ups. Monday, 30th of March 2020. This morning I was woken up by dripping sound. Our roof has lots of holes in it because our cottage is really old and tumble down. When it rains, we have to gather up all of the buckets and bowls and bottles to put underneath the drips. I don't mind the dripping because it makes our house sound like a deep, dark, dank cave. But when we're all stuck inside together, everyone starts to go a bit crazy. By the time I got up, Bo had already knocked over 3 bottles and spilt a bowl of Cheerios across the floor. I had to hop between the shrinking islands of dry, crunchy cereal to avoid my slippers getting covered in soggy Cheerio mush. Bo was being a very good boy because he was already cleaning up his mess by picking up and eating the dry Cheerios from the floor. I poured myself a bowl, but before I could get the spoon into my mouth, Mum had rushed in shouting things like, "Don't let your brother eat food off the floor! Where's my phone charger? And now I've got mush on my slippers!" I tried to explain that she should hop between the dry islands of cereal, but she wasn't having any of it. By then, her phone was plugged in and one eye was glazed over her screen while the other eye was glaring at me, even though it was Bo's mess. After a few moments, she tore herself away from the screen and sighed, "I think we've got a serious case of cabin fever." Cabin fever is what happens when we all feel cooped up from being trapped together in our little house for too long. And as soon as someone says cabin fever, we all start singing "I Got Cabin Fever" from the Muppets' Treasure Island. We've had cabin fever so often that I've learned all the words and could do all the voices. Unfortunately, Bo hasn't learned all the words yet, and he only knows the "I got cabin fever" line. And in fact, he thinks it's "I got gabba geeba." Mum and I cleared up the cereal, but Bo was still singing "gabba geeba" again and again, and Mum had gone back to her phone, so I thought I'd go and feed the animals before the cabin fever got any worse. Whilst I was feeding the animals, I made an incredible discovery. Looking after animals is just like looking after grown-ups with cabin fever. Grown-ups are like dogs. Just like dogs, grown-ups must be taken for regular walks, otherwise they start pacing up and down the house and muttering to themselves. Grown-ups are like cats. Our cat, Alfred the Great, is on a special draconian diet from the vet because he eats too much. And when Mum's stuck inside, I need to stop her from snacking too, or else she'll have eaten up all the snacks and there won't be any left for me. Grown-ups are like guinea pigs. Guinea pigs don't do very much. Even imaginary guinea pigs are a little bit boring. But they do give very good cuddles. I found that a short cuddle is a surefire cure for grown-ups who have caught a bad case of cabin fever. Grown-ups are like stick insects. It's very easy looking after a stick insect, but sometimes I worry that Stickosaurus might be a little bit lonely without other stick insects. There's at least 2 of everything else. Even I've got Bo, although he can be very annoying sometimes. But Mum doesn't have any other grown-ups in our house. Maybe that's why she spends all day blabbering on the phone about crystals. Grown-ups are like goats. We've got a copy of the RSPCA guidebook for keeping goats. Well, we've got the pages from 45 to 52 because Diane the goat ate them. Anyway, the guidebook says that goats must not be tethered. Even though they're fantastic at escaping, you shouldn't tie goats up because it can hurt their necks. My mum's phone is always needing charging up, so sometimes she sits for hours stuck to the wall staring at pictures of crystals looking at the news like a tethered goat. I decided that my mum needed some looking after, so I hid her phone charger at the bottom of Bo's toy box. This ticked off most of her needs because she was exercising by rushing around the house. She wasn't tethered to her phone and she got a hug from Bo when he said sorry for putting her charger in his toy box. Felt a bit guilty about getting Bo into trouble, and also my plan only seemed to make the cabin fever worse because by lunchtime everyone was grumpy with everyone else. That's why I've now decided to hold an official family meeting. Here's the agenda I made for the meeting. Official family meeting. Attendees, me, Bo, Mum, Alfred the Great, the cat, Stickosaurus, stick insect. Discussion points. What are the symptoms of cabin fever? How to avoid catching cabin fever? What to do if you suspect you or a member of your household has cabin fever? What should we do if everyone has cabin fever? Any other business? Chapter 3. What about friends? Monday, 30th of March 2020. Sometimes I think imaginary friends are better than real friends. They never argue about what game to play, and they always know exactly how you're feeling. And they don't have any bad habits like farting, except for Fartbot, the imaginary farting robot, or picking their noses, apart from Norbert, Noseful. He's another one of my imaginary friends, and he keeps all his things in his nose. In his left nostril, he keeps his violin, his paintbrushes, and his pet mouse. In his right nostril, he keeps his golf clubs and his pet elephant. In total, I have 7 imaginary friends. Number 1, Evil Egbert. He's about the size of an egg, sits on my shoulder, telling me to do shockingly evil things. Once he told me to trap my little brother under a laundry basket with 3 heavy dictionaries on top of him to stop him escaping. Don't worry, I almost never do what Egbert tells me to do. Number 2, Norbert Noseful. Everyone already knows about him. Number 3, Parsley the imaginary guinea pig. I invented her before I had any real guinea pigs. And then it wouldn't have been fair to get rid of her because I got real ones. Anyway, the real guinea pigs don't mind that she's imaginary. Also, I named her after myself because I was really young then and didn't have a very good imagination. Number 4, Pom Pom the ninja. He's an imaginary ninja who looks after the imaginary unicorns at the end of my garden. Sometimes the other ninjas make fun of him for liking unicorns so much, but he doesn't mind because unicorns are awesome. They eat fairy dust and poop rainbows. Number 5, Detective Inspector Dracula. A vampire who's also a detective. Quite a lot of the time it turns out that Detective Dracula was the murderer as well as the detective, which makes everything a bit awkward. Number 6, the reading dog. The reading dog is one of those big shaggy brown dogs who just loves books. He loves nothing better than to snuggle up and read my book over my shoulder. Number 7, Fartbot. A genius scientist created him with cutting-edge fart extinguishing technology. But unfortunately the scientist got distracted and put the nozzle on backwards, so now Fartbot just farts a lot. Most of the time, this is kind of nasty, but sometimes it's useful to have someone to blame. Today I was in the garden with Detective Dracula trying to solve the mystery of the sheep skull on the wall. How did it get there? Who killed the sheep? What happened to the rest of his body? I had 2 suspects. First, my brother Bo, who's always digging around in the dirt, unearthing rotting old things, and he won't let us throw them away because he calls them his treasure. One time he found a black leathery bird's claw the size of his fist. He carried it around tied to a piece of string for weeks until Mum accidentally threw it in the bin. My other suspect is Detective Dracula himself, but I couldn't work out how an imaginary vampire could lift a real sheep's skull. I was stumped. And so was Detective Dracula. That's the problem with imaginary friends. When you run out of ideas, so do they. So I decided to send for backup. I ran inside and grabbed the enchanted tablet. It looks and works just like a normal tablet, except it uses magic instead of electronics. That's how I talked to my best friend Tui, pronounced 2E. There are lots of brilliant things about Tui, like that she can speak Maui. And she always has the best ideas for games, and her hair is a different colour each week, and she always knows how to solve a mystery. But there's one terrible, horrible, atrocious thing about Tui. She lives in New Zealand. That's on the other side of the world, and I can only talk to her by magic electronic tablets. Tui cracked the case immediately. Detective Dracula must have used his evil vampire powers to possess Beau and make him put the skull on the wall. Then we played some games together, because even though we're best friends, sometimes it's a bit difficult just talking through an enchanted portal. I don't know what grown-ups blabber on about for hours and hours. After talking to Tui, I felt happy, but I also felt sad that she lived so far away. When I feel like this, imaginary friends aren't much help because they feel just the same way as me. So I wrote a postcard full of questions for my gran. My gran is tiny. Not tiny like evil Egbert, but she is smaller than me. Sometimes I think she's so small that she's not really a grown-up. She's more of a grown-down. Normal grown-ups are so busy worrying about crystals and getting super glue out of Beau's hair, but my gran always has time to understand. Here are some of the questions I asked her. Did you ever have an imaginary friend? Who do you miss seeing the most at the moment? How should I keep in touch with my friends? What do you think we should do when we get to meet up again in real life? So, if you want to hear chapter 4 of the story, you will need to turn this video off and move on to my next video because they won't all fit on one. Hope you're enjoying it so far.